for the US Grand Prix West at Long Beach in California, just south of Los Angeles. And it's the Monaco of the New World, for it's a bumpy street circuit with a 2-mile lap which twists and turns through the city, past the high-rise buildings and along the waterfront by the landlocked Queen Mary. And with the winter-long bitter feuding between motor racing's governing body and the car constructors over, it's the first World Championship event of the year. And it's a race that's wide open because of the new no-skirts ruling and the fact that for the first time all the cars are on Michelin radial tyres, plus the first appearance of new cars from no less than 8 teams, including the new turbo Ferraris and the 12-cylinder Talbot Matras, but not the innovative and controversial new Lotus 88, which has been excluded by the stewards for allegedly infringing the design rules. There's some notable driver changes too, like Andretti to Alfa Romeo, Prost to Renault and Pironi to Ferrari. But at the end of practice, it's the totally unexpected long-serving Riccardo Patrese in last year's Arrows in his first ever pole position, with a lap at 1 minute 19.4 seconds, and that's about 1.5 seconds slower than Piquet's time with skirts on his Brabham last year. Then a surprise to no one. The 2 new Williams cars of world champion Alan Jones, just ahead of his teammate, South African Grand Prix winner Carlos Reutemann. 4th fastest, last year's winner Nelson Piquet, and there is the man who's in pole position, young Riccardo Patrese, 2nd last year, and he's driving last year's Arrows. In contrast to virtually all the other cars on the grid here today, which are brand new. And Patrese, ex-double world champion in karts, has got a tremendous challenge, because if he can get away first, he's got a good chance of staying ahead on this demanding circuit. So now, all set for the start, over 80.5 laps. And it's go, and a beautiful clean start from Riccardo Patrese, and the rest flash through after him. And it's Patrese leading Reutemann in the Williams car, with Alan Jones in 3rd position and Gilles Villeneuve in the Ferrari. And it's Villeneuve on the right, and he's taken the lead at Queen's Hairpin, but brakes locked up and he's gone off, and the rest go through, and that's Prost in the Renault. Prost in the Renault has been punted by one of the drivers who were trying to pass him and succeeding. And young Alain Prost in his first race in the Ferrari is in the Renault is out already and bitterly disappointed. And as we look at the inset, there are the leaders. It's Riccardo Patrese in the Arrows, leading Reutemann, 3rd Jones, 4th Pironi in the Ferrari, or is it Villeneuve? Let's get a check as they come towards us. It's Patrese in the Arrows. Then Carlos Reutemann, the South African Grand Prix winner. There he is, there. Jones behind him, and it's Villeneuve 4th, Piquet 5th, and Eddie Cheever, the young American driver, in 6th position. And now Patrese has got things exactly as he wants them to be as he goes round the right-hander at Le Gazoumet with the Queen Mary in the background, and goes on to the fastest part of the course. That is the section along Shoreline Drive, where they're up into top gear. It's tremendously quick along here, and there's a gigantic crowd out to watch this race, which has built up over the last 5 years into a semi-classic. Patrese, Reutemann, Jones, Villeneuve, Piquet, Pironi, Cheever is the order. Now you can look down on this very demanding circuit, natural roads, but artificially blocked off on some of the corners to make a real street circuit. There's Andretti through, but coming towards us in the lead, it's Patrese, Reutemann, Jones, Villeneuve, Piquet, Pironi, Cheever, and Mario Andretti, the American hero who won this race some years ago, is in 8th position in the Alfa Romeo on its first drive. Looking down, Patrese, now you can see the gap. And you can see what an advantage Riccardo Patrese has with a clear circuit in front of him. Down to Le Gazoumet. Now, take you round the course. From Le Gazoumet, the hairpin right-hander, it's still Reutemann, Jones, Villeneuve, Piquet, Pironi. Now from Le Gazoumet, under the bridge, into the Shoreline Drive section, down to Queen's Hairpin, which is the hairpin where Clay Regazzoni crashed so tragically in the Ensign last year, and he's still recovering from his injuries. Round the Queen's Hairpin, into the left-hander on the way to Pine Avenue. Now, this is a very twisty part of the circuit. Watch the way Patrese takes it ahead of Carlos Reutemann in the Arrows as they come up to another left-hander. Patrese, Reutemann, Jones. Villeneuve is still in fourth position. And as they go down Ocean Boulevard now, towards the right-hander at Linden Avenue, where they drop downhill and go into the left-hander at Les Essais du Clos. There's Linden Avenue. And Reutemann is closing up just a little, I think, but the refreshing thing about this race at the very moment I'm talking to you is that Gilles Villeneuve in the Turbo Ferrari is in fourth place. Watch for the Scarlet Ferrari, because they were out of contention all last year. It's the new turbo car, but the two Williams cars in second and third position, and there is Jones third, behind the orange and white arrows of Riccardo Patrese, are chasing hard, and Reutemann now is closing up on the Italian. Number 29, Riccardo Patrese, leading, 26 years old, comes from Padova in Italy, and he's the unofficial sports car champion of the world, because last year he drove for Lancia and won a lot of races. Now let's look again. They're going to show us a replay of the start. And watch that tremendously exciting section where Gilles Villeneuve came down to Queen's Hairpin. There is Patrese leading Reutemann and Jones, and Villeneuve will be on the right of the picture. There he is, Gilles Villeneuve. Watch him. He comes past the other cars, brakes to the maximum, locks up his wheels. Now look back and see, there's the shunt with Alain Prost in the Renault, and John Watson finagling his way past Prost. And that's one of the Fittipaldi cars in the background. And now we're back again with the leaders. And it's still Patrese, I was saying, the unofficial sports car champion of the world, with some brilliant drives for Lancia last year. He has yet to win a Grand Prix, although he led in South Africa in 1978 until his engine gave out. But now, if Patrese can just keep it going, he's in a very commanding position. So let's watch three real experts at work. Number 29, Patrese. Then number 2, Carlos Reutemann. Number 1, the world champion, Alan Jones, going down Shoreline Drive. Tremendously demanding for the drivers, because you have to keep your concentration absolutely locked on the whole time. If you relax for a split second, you lose control of the car, and Carlos Reutemann is definitely closing up on Patrese. And that's Hector Ribach behind Reutemann. Hector Ribach, the second of the two Brabham drivers, and the first is Nelson Piquet, who is well up with the leaders. But Ribach is already being lapped, has already been lapped by this man, number 29, Riccardo Patrese, by Carlos Reutemann, and soon by Alan Jones. Alan Jones is driving a typically canny race, and he has just gone past Ribach. Alan Jones, who has a bit of a jinx on him as far as this Long Beach race is concerned, because in 1978, and there it is, the 10 laps out of 80 and a half, Patrese leading Reutemann and Jones, Pironi in the Ferrari in fourth position, then Piquet in the Brabham fifth, and the second of the two Ferraris, Gilles Villeneuve, in sixth position. So both the Ferraris The turbo 1.5 litre V6 Ferraris are in the first 6 places and on their way to World Championship points if they finish in the top 6. Carlos Reutemann, the most experienced driver with the possible exception of Mario Andretti in this race. No, Reutemann has driven in more Grand Prix than Andretti. And now we're looking at some of the men behind the fantastic scrap, and that's Piquet. Piquet challenging Pironi. There is Patrese leading the race, and behind Patrese the leader, Reutemann in second place. There, I break commentary, is one of the Renaults, and it's René Arnoux. Don't forget that Alain Prost went off at Queen's Hairpin on the first lap and is out of the race. It looks as though Arnoux is in trouble as we rejoin the leaders at Queen's Hairpin. And it's still Patrese. Patrese is being pressured very hard by Reutemann, but he's keeping his cool. He's not allowing the Argentine driver, Carlos Reutemann, who is driving today in his 130th Grand Prix, the most experienced driver in the race, and he has won 11 of those races in his distinguished career. And that's Jacques Laffite. That's the first shot that we've had. And look at this, Didier Pironi in the Ferrari, being chased very hard indeed, but pressured by Nelson Piquet. Behind Piquet is Villeneuve, then it's Eddie Cheever, Mario Andretti and Jacques Laffite, and there is Laffite. So, behind the race leaders, real pressure for the remaining places in the vital top 6 which count for World Championship points. There is Pironi in 4th position, Piquet, who is 5th, Villeneuve, who is 6th, Cheever 7th, Mario Andretti 8th, and Jacques Laffite in 9th position. There's Andretti, number 22. So, Pironi, Piquet, and Jacques Laffite in the blue and white Talbot Matra, 12-cylinder car. Pironi down to Queens. Now, Pironi has got in his wheel tracks, as we look at them now, Nelson Piquet, the young Brazilian driver who has taken over from Emerson Fittipaldi in terms of being the best South American driver. And Pironi that we're looking at now, number 28, who was with Ligier last year and has gone to Ferrari, has got chasing him very hard indeed. Nelson Piquet in the Brabham, the man who won this race last year, Piquet. And Piquet's going to take that position from Pironi, I'm sure, because he is set up beautifully now to pull out of, as we look at Patrese, the leader, still followed by Reutemann, with Jones dropping back a bit. But the interest in the race at the moment is Nelson Piquet in 5th position going to be able to take the 4th place from Didier Pironi in the Ferrari? Patrese the leader. Reutemann 2nd. Now watch the way these cars turn into the corners. They are fantastically fast. Just a fraction of a turn on the steering wheel and the whole car pivots about the centre and flips into the corner, and Patrese's got it under immaculate control. He's not letting the fact that Carlos Reutemann is looming big in his mirrors, and there's the battle behind them. There's Pironi, Piquet, Villeneuve, Cheever, Andretti and Laffite. And here it is, Pironi in the Ferrari. Piquet, Villeneuve, Cheever, Andretti, and that's Laffite. And Pironi, I remind you, is in 4th position, still being pressured by number 5, Piquet, who is in 5th position. Watch this, there should be a change coming down to Queens on this lap, because Piquet is in a beautiful passing position now. He's going down Linden Avenue into the left-hander at Les Esses, up to the Indy left in a moment, then up to Le Gazoumet, the hairpin. And I will forecast that as they go down Shoreline Drive, Piquet will make his challenge for 4th position by taking Pironi. Let's see if my forecast is right. Now they're into Shoreline Drive, and Piquet has got the nose of the Brabham, or will have in a moment. tucked right up under the aerofoil of Pironi's Ferrari as we look at Patrese back again to the leader, and you can see that Reutemann has got a bit closer. And you see also that Alan Jones is playing a typically canny race. He's just watching the leaders from about 100 yards back, staying in contention, ready to challenge if either of the men in front hit trouble, as we look down on this unique in the new world circuit at Long Beach, California. The leader, Patrese. This is his 4th year with the Arrows team, and now it's happened and we've missed it. Piquet has gone up ahead of Pironi, so Nelson Piquet is 4th, Pironi is 5th, Villeneuve in the Ferrari is still 6th, Eddie Cheever is 7th, Mario Andretti is 8th, and the last of the cars in that lineup is Jacques Lafitte in 9th position. So now Nelson Piquet in the white and blue Brabham is on his way. Already he's pulled out a gap. Look at it from Pironi. Nelson Piquet with the Ford Cosworth V8 engine, 3 litres, 500 horsepower it's producing, or jolly nearly these days. Ahead, and Cheever, where's Villeneuve? Villeneuve is missing. Gilles Villeneuve is out of contention, and Eddie Cheever has moved up a place as Pironi comes down to Queens. That's interesting. The blue car, the Tyrrell, the unsponsored Tyrrell, has moved up a place, and Eddie Cheever is now well up amongst the leaders. He's in 6th position. Patrese leads, Reutemann 2nd. There's Patrese. Where is Jones? Watch for the... No, Jones is still watching from the back. We should be able to look down and identify. There is Patrese, there is Reutemann. We're on the Shoreline Drive section again, and still no sign of Alan Jones. I think Alan is perhaps being a little bit too careful, because if he lets things go on as they are going now, it'll mean that Patrese and his teammate Reutemann, who won the South African Grand Prix, for which incidentally there were no points, because as a result of this, as I was saying, bitter fight between the governing body of the sport and the car constructors, the South African Grand Prix was ruled non-eligible for World Championship points. So although Reutemann won, this is the first race in which there will be championship points this year, and Patrese is on his way to 9 of them for a win. Reutemann 6 for 2nd, but there is still a long, long way to go. Patrese, this is Le Gazoumet, first gear corner, foot hard there is Alan Jones. So Alan Jones is now starting a charge. Alan Jones is starting to close on Patrese, the leader. Reutemann is 2nd. I remind you that Pironi has gone down to 5th position, and that's John Watson that we caught a flash of there. And now Reutemann is right with Patrese. The 2 Williams cars and their drivers, 2 of the most experienced and canniest men in Formula One Grand Prix racing these days, have started the challenge. Jones is starting to close on Reutemann. Reutemann is right with number 29, Riccardo Patrese, the race leader. You don't see a scene like that in motor racing anywhere else but Long Beach, with the possible exception of Monaco. Down to Linden Avenue, the left-hander on the way after the right-hander to the Indy left. And all the time, don't forget, Riccardo Patrese, with the 2 mirrors on the right and left of his windscreen, is seeing the big white and green Williams of Carlos Reutemann getting closer and closer and closer. Now they're lapping John Watson in the McLaren, and Reutemann's going to challenge. Now Reutemann is in a perfect position to take, or to try to take, the leader. He's coming out of his slipstream. He's going to challenge at Queen's, but no, Riccardo Patrese holds the line. But if Reutemann keeps up this pressure, and Patrese cannot block him off on corners, Reutemann is inevitably going to get through and take the lead. But Patrese has now been 4 years with Arrows. He has been racing for a long, long time, because he's been racing for 16 of his 26 years. He started at the age of 10 in karts, Riccardo Patrese. So he's got a lot of experience of being pressured, and my goodness, he's being pressured now. Look at this. The leader, 29. Second, number 2, Reutemann. Both have Ford Cosworth V8 engines. Reutemann's car is brand new. It's his first race in this car. And a month ago, Reutemann's Williams was a wooden mock-up. It's totally different from the car he drove at South Africa. Because in this race, it's the first race of the season when they have no skirts, no aerodynamic skirts dragging on the ground to hug the car downwards towards the track and help cornering. And now Reutemann's going to challenge again. Watch! He's going to pass him, he's going to take Patrese. No, but Patrese's got the inside line and he holds the lead. But he must be a very worried young man in the cockpit of the Arrows, and all the time these two are slowing each other up, and Alan Jones must inexorably be gaining on them foot by foot, yard by yard, because this kind of combative wheel to wheel, gearbox to nose driving that Patrese and Reutemann are doing. Actually, there is Carlos Reutemann. There's an insert to show you what the Argentine driver looks like. And it was well that they showed us that, because you are looking now at one of the doughtiest and most determined men in motor racing these days, who has driven for Ferrari, who has driven for Lotus, who has driven for Brabham, and I'm talking about Carlos Reutemann, who is on the gearbox, metaphorically speaking, of Riccardo Patrese, the race leader. There's Alan Jones, and Alan Jones is closing up. Don't forget that behind Jones is Nelson Piquet, and this is where surely, I keep saying it, but this surely, and it is! Carlos Reutemann started his challenge earlier, and we have a new race leader of the American Grand Prix on lap 26 out of 80 and a half. And as if that wasn't enough, Alan Jones is now closing right up on Riccardo Patrese in the orange car, who is now in second place. So Reutemann, who won the South African Grand Prix with a brilliant drive on wet roads with slick tyres, is leading the race. Riccardo Patrese, who finished second last year, looks to me as though he's going to have a fight on his hand to finish second this year, because look, the third of these three cars is Alan Jones in the second of the two Williams. There's Reutemann again in the inset. That's the face of the man who now leads. And as I was saying, Riccardo Patrese is going to have a struggle on his hands to hold that second position. And see, he nearly lost the Arrows there. He's on about 10/10ths of his driving ability, absolutely flat out. And this gives you a good idea of how superlative racing drivers' reflexes have to be. Reutemann completing soon his first lap in the lead and pulling away from Patrese. Now, where is Jones in relation to Patrese? You see the answer, and it looks to me as Patrese is going to lose second place. Jones comes out of his slipstream, takes the inside line at Queen's hairpin, and as we have seen so many times in the recent past, the brilliant Williams team, which is very much the team to beat these days, is again in the situation of having both first and second places. Now, the Williams team is famous for its immaculate preparation and superb reliability. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens from here on in this race, because Alan Jones is the acknowledged and unequivocal team leader. And the race orders, that's Patrese in the pits. Riccardo Patrese, now that's significant, and that may account for the fact that Alan Jones was able to pass Patrese so comparatively easily, because the young Italian, who must feel bitterly disappointed, is in the pits, and it is obviously not a tyre change. And it looks to me, from the leisurely way that the mechanics are going about things, looks to me as though they're taking the engine cover off, and it looks as though Patrese is in real trouble, maybe out of the race. And I was saying that Alan Jones is the contracted team leader, and we're looking at Reutemann, the race leader at the present moment, and the instructions in the Williams team are that if in the last 10 laps Alan Jones is in second position behind Reutemann, Reutemann is contractually obligated to move over and let Alan Jones as the team leader go through. Well, there's a long way to go yet. So anything can happen. Reutemann leads, Jones second, Piquet in the Brabham third, Pironi in the Ferrari in fourth position, and the young American Eddie Cheever in the unsponsored Tyrrell in fifth position. And that's a brilliant performance by Cheever, because he's in a car which is acknowledged to be quite a lot slower than some of the others in this race, because Ken Tyrrell simply does not have the money in the unsponsored situation that he's in at the moment to do the testing to get the car absolutely au point with the others. So after 26 laps, there are the positions, and Mario Andretti is in sixth position in his first drive in the V12 Alfa Romeo, having left the Lotus team last year. And on goes remorselessly Carlos Reutemann. But Alan Jones is lapping fastest now. I've had a stopwatch on Alan Jones, and he is lapping faster than Carlos Reutemann, and he's starting to gain on his teammate. Reutemann going up towards Le Gazomé. That's Marc Surer in the ensign. And that was Riccardo Patrese back in the race. So whatever Patrese's trouble was seems to have been at least temporarily cleared, because Patrese is back in the race. Reutemann leads. Jones is in second place. And there's Patrese, who ironically has once again got the two Williams cars behind him, but in a very different situation than when he last had them behind him, because then he was in the lead and Reutemann was second, and now Patrese looks as though he is shortly going to be lapped by Carlos Reutemann. And Jones, there we are. You can see how quickly Jones is going as he collects a paper bag between the front wheel and the front wing. And he's definitely closing on Reutemann. And incidentally, when you see the Williams cars in close-up, have a good look at the wing on the front. Because with no skirts this year, the whole aerodynamics of the car, there's a good shot. An enormous aerofoil on the front of the Williams car, helping to keep it down on the ground. So, there's confirmation. Alan Jones, 5.09, a speed of 89.678 miles an hour. And that compares with Nelson Piquet's fastest lap last year of 1:18.8. But don't forget that that was with the aerodynamic skirts, which made the cars a lot faster. And Jones, the very determined, the very gritty Australian world champion of 1980, is now politely starting to pressure his own teammate ahead of him, Carlos Reutemann. I'm here, Carlos, he's saying, because Reutemann will undoubtedly be able to see his number one team leader in his mirrors. They're coming up to Patrese. Is Patrese going to move over and let them through? He's not famous for it, frankly. He's a man who has politely been described sometimes as having the widest car in motor racing, because you can just move an inch or two one way or the other and make it impossible for the man behind you to pass. Patrese has no real need to do that now, because he's well out of contention, a lap adrift. To the leader, And Cheever, there is Cheever in the blue Tyrrell, behind him Mario Andretti, behind Mario Andretti Jacques Lafitte. There is Piquet ahead of Pironi, and we're back again with Cheever, Andretti, Lafitte. And this is indeed interesting as we look at Mario Andretti. There's the 41-year-old 1978 world champion who drove for Lotus then. Very much back in contention. He had a terrible year with Lotus last year, decided he had had enough, that he was going to go to Alfa Romeo, who you may remember, those of you who are tuned into motor racing. Alfa Romeo led the American Grand Prix at Watkins Glen, the last race of 1980, with young Bruno Giacomelli in the cockpit for lap after lap until the engine blew up. But that was when Mario Andretti decided to transfer, and both the Williams cars have now got ahead of Patrese, who was ahead of them when we saw him a few moments ago. And Alan Jones really is with Carlos Reutemann. There's the race leader. And number one behind him is the world champion, Alan Jones, in his 82nd Grand Prix. There is Arnoux, there is Sura, and it's number two Reutemann leading, number one Alan Jones. Both of them have lapped Patrese, and they will soon lap Marc Sura, number 14, the Swiss driver, in the Ensign car. And the great thing about both these drivers now is that they will be into a race rhythm. They will have the braking points, the acceleration points, the gear change points. As we look at the positions after 30 laps, no change. Reutemann, Jones, Piquet, Pironi, Cheever, Andretti. Two Americans in the first 6 places, a Frenchman, a Brazilian, an Australian and an Argentine driver. And Carlos Reutemann leads as they come down to Queens and goes through and passes Marc Sura, number 14, which Alan Jones will do in a moment. The interest in this race, frankly, is not so much for the lead. And it is, because that's Reutemann off. And Jones goes through. I spoke too soon because Carlos Reutemann, as if to prove me wrong, misjudged things. Maybe his foot slipped on the brake pedal, maybe his brakes faded, whatever the reason. Carlos Reutemann has blown it in the biggest possible way, and number one leads, number two is second. The Williams team are in their rightful positions as far as team orders are concerned. Although it didn't happen as a result of orders, it happened as a result of this man, Alan Jones, not making a mistake, where his teammate, frankly, the more experienced Carlos Reutemann, did make a mistake. And Reutemann must be metaphorically kicking himself in the cockpit of that Williams now. He has lost the lead, and there is no way I can see that he'll get it back again unless Alan Jones has car trouble, because if there is one thing that Alan Jones does not do, it is making mistakes. And he's closing up on René Arnoux in the Renault. Have a good look at the Renault. This has not been its race. Arnoux was second fastest in practice last year. This is a very difficult circuit for a Renault, and a very difficult circuit for poor Patrese. There he is, back in the pits for the second time. He is obviously in real trouble. He must be out of the race as far as getting points are concerned, as Alan Jones goes through and takes René Arnoux. Well on our way now to half distance in this 80.5 lap race, as Carlos Reutemann takes the Renault driver. Very difficult circuit, I was saying, for turbocharged cars like the Renault, because they have throttle lag. You have to release the accelerator a bit earlier than you would normally do, and press it for acceleration a bit earlier too into the corners. Otherwise, the turbo lag overcomes you. You do not get the instant response that you get from the normally aspirated engines like those which are propelling Alan Jones in the lead and Reutemann second, and Alan Jones bobs out of Hector Ribarc's slipstream. Ribarc, the Mexican driver, in the Brabham, who's just recovered from a nasty bout of hepatitis. It's his first race since he came out of his sickbed. And he's certainly chosen a pretty demanding place to come back into motor racing. Alan Jones on his way. And that car that you saw stationary in the background, watch out for it next time, was that of Jean-Pierre Jarier, the French driver who drove for Tyrrell last year and hasn't actually got a drive this year. He's only in this race, or was in this race, in the Talbot Matra, because Jean-Pierre Jabouille is still recovering from the broken legs that he suffered in the American Grand Prix at Watkins Glen in the Renault. But back with the leaders, Alan Jones, Carlos Reutemann, number 6 Hector Ribach has been lapped. Watch the style of the world champion, and Patrese still in the pits. Off comes the engine cover, so there is real trouble for the Italian. And Jacques Laffite is now, the second of these two cars is the Frenchman Jacques Laffite, pressuring very hard indeed. Number 3, the young American Eddie Cheever, who has got ahead of him Didier Pironi in the Ferrari. Now let's just establish the order. There is Pironi, who is in 4th position. Cheever is in 5th position. Jacques Laffite is in 6th place. Number 3, Cheever, is in 5th position. Jacques Laffite is in 6th. And behind them, Mario Andretti. So, Jones, Reutemann, Piquet, Pironi, Cheever, Laffite, Andretti. There is Cheever, there is Laffite. Behind them, Andretti. And Mario has got a new lease of life in the Alfa Romeo. That's Mario Andretti in the red and white car. There's Pironi coming past the Linden Avenue sign into Shoreline Drive. Chico Serra is about to be lapped. And Laffite is really pushing Eddie Cheever very hard indeed with the nose of the Talbot Matra. This is the first race of this car too, not the one we're looking at, that one, the light blue one of Jacques Laffite. It's the first race of this brand new car, the Talbot, which was a Ligier last year, but this year has a totally different engine. And Laffite tries to pass Cheever. Cheever slams the door in his face. Pironi, now let's watch. That's Cheever, Laffite and Andretti absolutely together. A wonderful scrap for 5th position. Ahead of them, the 4th place man, Pironi. And they're closing up on him. I've said before that when cars are together like this, it is surprising, but they slow each other up because you can't take the best racing line. But in spite of that, they're closing on Pironi. That was Pironi just going round the corner. And I think that Didier Pironi in the turbocharged 1.5 litre V6 Ferrari is slowing, because there is no doubt about the fact that the battle for 5th is gaining on him. And the battle for 5th is these 3, Cheever, Laffite, Andretti. Watch Pironi come down. There's Pironi in the Ferrari, the Frenchman, his first race in a Ferrari. Cheever, Laffite, Andretti. The people who say that motor racing is processional should certainly be watching this race. We've had changes for the lead, and there are going to be changes here soon, because all the time Cheever is getting closer and closer and closer to Pironi. Pironi has got behind him number 21 Chico Serra, the Brazilian driver, in only his 2nd race in the Fittipaldi car. We're looking at the race leader now, number 1 Alan Jones. 11 wins, he retired, and look at that! That was Laffite, he's overdone it. He's got too close to Eddie Cheever, and he's stoved in the nose of the Talbot. He has lost his position because Andretti has passed him, as you just saw. And the enormously likeable Jacques Laffite, the Frenchman, number 26, who comes from Plagny, and this is his 92nd Grand Prix. is out of this one because he will have to go to the pits and change the nose at best, and it'll take some time to do that, but he will undoubtedly come back into the race to keep up some high-speed testing on this demanding circuit. They need all the racing miles they can get. That's the half-distance lap. You can see the positions for yourself. And 7th is now Andretti. 8th, the man to watch, Patrick Tambay, the Frenchman, driving in his first... And hello, who's this? It's Bruno Giacomelli, as you see, the young Italian who led at Watkins Glen last year, and he's obviously in trouble, as Alan Jones, obviously not in trouble, goes through. So, recap on the position. Still that man leading, number 1, Alan Jones, followed by Carlos Reutemann. Behind Carlos Reutemann, and we've seen very little of him in this race, Nelson Piquet, who won last year. Now Eddie Cheever moving up on Didier Pironi. Jacques Lafitte out of contention. Mario Andretti up into 6th position. And behind Mario Andretti, Patrick Tambay, the Frenchman. Driving, incidentally, in his first Formula One race since 1978. And driving in the new Theodore car. Let's hope we see something of it. Alan Jones, 34 years old, now a tremendously wealthy man who owns a lot of Australia because he's a very good investor, an ace wheeler dealer, great at buying and selling, and he's now got a great deal of money to buy things with and then sell them at a profit subsequently, and Alan's very good at that. Son of a great motor racing man himself, the late Stan Jones, who won the Australian Grand Prix in his day. And Alan Jones achieved one of his ambitions over the winter when he went back to Australia in a Williams car and won the Australian Grand Prix as his father had done. And he said he gave him almost as much pleasure as becoming world champion last year. So, smooth, unflurried, holding a perfect line, controlling the race from the front as he goes down shoreline drive, down through the gears, 2nd gear here, 1st gear here, world champion Alan Jones. Reutemann dropping back. I don't know if Carlos, who is very easily discouraged, has become discouraged, and we're looking at Didier Pironi now in the Ferrari. I don't know if Reutemann has become discouraged, but he's certainly dropped back in comparison with where he was in contention with Alan Jones not so long ago. There is Chico Serra. Behind Chico Serra is the red and white Alfa Romeo. Mario Andretti is ahead of Cheever. Mario Andretti ahead of Eddie Cheever is now up into 4th position. No, he's in 5th position, still behind Pironi, but gaining. Mario Andretti, 22, about to lap 21 Chico Serra, who moves over and politely lets the American through. Now, Mario Andretti in the Alfa Romeo, the man we're looking at, who is in 5th position, has got his sights set on Didier Pironi, who drives for Ferrari, as Mario himself has done in the past. In fact, Mario won his first Grand Prix in a Ferrari many years ago. That's the man who has won at Indianapolis, who has been... And there's the gap. That's Pironi. That's Pironi in 4th position. Mario Andretti 5th. Then behind the white car of Serra, Eddie Cheever, who is 6th. Don't forget that it's still Piquet 3rd, Reutemann 2nd, and Alan Jones in the lead. And Mario Andretti has got his sights set on the flying Ferrari of Didier Pironi, number 28, the 28-year-old Parisian in his 45th Grand Prix. And that's him. The gap is visibly closing. Pironi is driving the new KKK turbocharged Ferrari. They brought two of the new Comprex supercharged Ferraris here and tried them, but it was the turbocharged car that they opted to come out in. And there is the leader, Alan Jones, going round Le Gazomé again. Not seeing the Queen Mary, but it's still there.
Patrese did have a definite problem. He actually went into the fence.
So Jones on his own. He will be getting signals, of course, from team owner Alan Jones. There are the positions. Mario Andretti in 5th place, challenging Didier Pironi, who is 4th, keeping ahead of Eddie Cheever, who is 5th. But none of them making any impression on the unseen Nelson Piquet, because it is quite incredible the way the cameras continually miss the Brazilian, who is in 3rd place, staying with Alan Jones, the race leader, number 1. Good weather conditions, and Chris Pook, who is the man who organises. Hello, look at this! That's Pironi and Andretti. Pironi, who is 4th, Andretti, who is 5th. And while I've been talking to you, Mario Andretti has been remorselessly carving out the gap between himself and Pironi, closing up on the Frenchman. There is Cheever, who is 6th. But this is the excitement, and it is going to be exciting, because both of these cars produce over 500 brake horsepower. And Pironi in his first race for Ferrari, as we watch Jones go round the Le Gazomé hairpin and away down Shoreline Drive again. Let's watch out for Mario Andretti in 5th position, chasing the 4th place man Didier Pironi. That's Chico Serra again, and that's it. There's Pironi in the white helmet and the scarlet Ferrari. Mario Andretti tries to pass, just shows Pironi the nose of the Alfa Romeo, as much to say, don't relax for 1 split second, young Frenchman, or I'll be past you. And here they come. "51 laps out of 80.5, and again Mario Andretti shows the front of his car to Pironi, and again Pironi holds his position. Those positions, of course, are several laps ago, because the computer doesn't quite keep up, and Mario Andretti's keeping up. He's going to get through past Pironi, and he does it. Mario Andretti is up into 4th position ahead of the Frenchman Didier Pironi in the Ferrari. Great stuff. And the crowd goes mad, and Pironi goes mad. Pironi fighting back. And look at the speed of that Ferrari. It's incredible. Pironi puts his foot down and fairly turbocharges away from Mario Andretti in the 3-litre Alfa Romeo. Pironi in a 1.5-litre Ferrari, but turbocharged. And my goodness, on the fast circuits after Long Beach here, those Ferraris are going to take a lot of catching. Don't forget, this is their first race. So Pironi back in 4th, Mario Andretti back in 5th. Ahead of them still Piquet 3rd, Reutemann 2nd, Jones 1st, behind them Eddie Cheever in 6th position, Patrick Tambay in 7th place. There's Cheever in the background in 6th position. Well, I wonder if Mario is going to be able to do anything about Didier Pironi. He's caught him once, he's passed him once, but Pironi has shown he doesn't like it. And this is where Mario started to catch up on the previous laps, and he does it again, and he's going to take him. He's through. Mario Andretti is back to 4th position with a superb passing manoeuvre. And this time he's broken the toe. He's enough ahead of Didier Pironi for Pironi to be out of his slipstream, and the crowd sees the American again in the lead position in front of Pironi, but in 4th position in the race overall. And again Pironi challenges. Is he going to retake Andretti as he did last time? Yes, indeed he has. No, he hasn't. Mario Andretti holds it. The crowd goes mad. Listen to them. Oh, what great stuff in this American Grand Prix at Long Beach of 1981, because it may be comparatively static in terms of race order ahead of these two, but what a great battle for 4th position. And it would seem to me that now Mario Andretti has got it, because Cheever is closing up on Pironi now. There's the blue Tyrrell. Mario Andretti's broken the toe, He's in 4th position. Pironi 5th and not making the impression on the American that he did in the previous laps. But the other American, Cheever, there he is, number 3, only 24 years old, and like so many drivers in this race, an ex-kart champion, son of a very wealthy father. And Cheever drove for... Cheever's done it! Cheever's done it, and as we missed a previous race change, position change, we missed that one. It was out of camera shot, but Eddie Cheever has moved up into 5th position behind Mario Andretti, ahead of Didier Pironi, and I suspect that the Frenchman Didier Pironi must be in trouble, because look at the distance between him and Andretti now. But he's got nothing to be ashamed of. His first race in Ferrari, and it's the first race too of the turbo Ferrari, and these cars take a lot of development, and it's going to take a lot of stopping later on in the season. But hats off to Eddie Cheever as we look again at Alan Jones. We're back with the race leader. Eddie Cheever then up into 5th position. And Jones is catching Pironi now. That's how quickly Alan Jones is going, because the man in front of him, and there he is, that man is in 6th position, and the man we're looking at now, Alan Jones, number 1, the leader, looks to me as though before very much longer he is going to catch, pass and lap the man who is in 6th position, Didier Pironi. Don't forget, and it's worth repeating, that this is the first Grand Prix. Those are the 55 lap positions, and they confirm what I've just been saying to you. Mario Andretti 4th, Cheever 5th, Pironi 6th, with Jones, Reutemann and Piquet in the first 3 positions. And I was saying, don't forget that this is the first Grand Prix since skirts came in, when they have been dropped. It is now obligatory to drive without skirts. That's the aerodynamic bit between the front and rear wheels, which drags along the ground. So the Williams that we're looking at is brand new, driving on radial Michelin tyres too for the first time. There's a lot of firsts in this race. So into, comparatively speaking, the closing stages of the race, with Alan Jones catching Didier Pironi. And Alan now is in such a commanding position, getting pit signals from Frank Williams, watched no doubt by the brilliant designer Patrick Head, who has done so much to put the Williams team in the forefront, as they have been. And we're now into the last 4 laps, because it's an 80.5 lap race, and the peculiar half lap is caused by the fact that the cars finish on the opposite side of the circuit from the side where they started. So Alan Jones is really into the nail-biting situation, if he could bite his nails. The man behind him, incidentally, is René Arnoux, who has come back into the race but not into contention, because you will recall we saw him stationary in the pit some time ago. And René Arnoux is just sitting now in the wheel tracks of the race leader, Alan Jones, who has got, I would say, less than 3 laps to go now, because we have seen the 76 lap caption, which takes a little time to come up. And the question is Alan Jones going to stay ahead of René Arnoux, or is the Frenchman going to try and go through? It is literally no problem to Alan Jones. He will know that Arnoux is not a challenge to him. Well, what a tribute to the Williams team. New cars, first and second. They won in South Africa. They won at Watkins Glen, which was the last race of 1980. They won in Canada. And yes, sure enough, René Arnoux goes through, powers through in the turbocharged 1.5 litre Renault. No problem to Alan Jones. He lets him do it. Alan Jones is acknowledged to have the best brain in the Formula One Grand Prix world. He drives not just with his reflexes, but with his brain every inch of the way, a master tactician. And he's just passed, you just saw a car stationary, that was Hector Ribark's car, which apparently spun out earlier on in the race, and I'm glad to say that the young Mexican is perfectly all right. So a lot of cars out of this race. John Watson is out, both Lotus cars are out of the race, Nigel Mansell and Elio De Angelis. Jean-Pierre Jarier out of contention in the Ligier. De Cesaris, the Italian, in the second of the two McLaren cars, is out. Jan Lammers is out in the ATS. Mark Surer kept going. By the way, Salazar and Daly in the two March cars, both non-started. Giacomelli is out of the race. But Alan Jones very much in it, and soon will be into his last lap. Yes, there it is. There is the flag man getting ready to give Alan Jones the checkered flag to say you have won the first point-scoring race of the 1981 World Championship Grand Prix season here at Long Beach, California. Alan Jones down to the hairpin at Le Gazoumet for the last time. A magnificent race he has driven. In the early stages, he just stayed back in third place and watched things up front going on between Carlos Reutemann and Riccardo Patrese, the race leader. Then he closed up on and took Patrese. Then he got past Carlos Reutemann when Reutemann made a mistake and Jones did not. Alan now into the last section of the course to take the checkered flag and win the US Grand Prix West of 1981. Taking his time now, waving to the crowd. He's going to stop soon, I would imagine, and come into the catchment area where he will get out of the car, and then all Grand Prix drivers leave straight away, and Alan Jones will certainly be able to do that. A very eloquent young man. So Alan Jones has won, Reutemann second, Nelson Piquet in the Brabham in third place, Mario Andretti a magnificent fourth place, Eddie Cheever an equally magnificent fifth, and Patrick Tambay in his first race in the Theodore in sixth position. And that has been a great American Grand Prix, and it means that Alan Jones is into the lead in the World Championship with 9 points. But Carlos Reutemann is second with 6 points. And as the crowd comes to look at the cars, we're into the very closing stages because the rest of the field are coming in. Piquet going round. There's the confirmation of the World Championship table with Patrick Tambay getting 1 point, and the next World Championship event is at Brazil on March the 29th.
Second, number 5, Nelson Piquet is third. Number 22, Mario Andretti is fourth. Number 3, Eddie Cheever is fifth. 33, Patrick Tambay is sixth.